morning! Welcome again to another digital series by Red Panda TV. I'm your host, Mike Yu. Today in our series, we do have a very special question. Something people has been asking for the longest time. Actually, not people, parents have been asking for the longest time. Um, is face-to-face going back to school the right thing to do on August? To answer some of this question is a very special guest today. He is a life coach, a motivational speaker, and someone who is in the education system also. Let me introduce to you our guest speaker for today, Mr. Eric Cruz. Hi, Eric. How are you?
Hello, good morning, Mike. Doing great. Thanks for having me here.
Thank you for having us also. Good morning. So,
Mabuhay ka. Good
mabuhay ka
morning.
rin. So, how's the pandemic treating you right now?
Actually, for me, surprisingly, really, really good. So I was able to go home, and so I'm staying with the family, and it's time to bond and basically take things slowly and
Mm-hmm.
learn from the situation. Also, so I feel very blessed and I'm grateful that I have this. I have provisions and things like that. So thinking about a lot of new things now and thinking of creating new things. Yeah, that's what's keeping me busy.
Great, great. Okay, for those people who do not know you, can you give us a little bit of background how you get started in this industry?
Yeah, thank you. So, just like what you said, so I'm a motivational speaker. I'm a speaker. I'm also an author. I've
Mm-hmm.
written textbooks for the educational sector.
Um, Eric, are you still there? Okay, we're having a
15
couple
years
of
now. So I've been with Benedictine International School for the past 15 years, and I've been working with them and advocating systems thinking in the Philippine education or the use of systems thinking in Philippine education.
I see, I see. Eric, you were cut off a while ago. I think there's a little bit of internet problem a while ago. Can you go back to which school are you connected to again? Sorry about that.
Yes, no worries. So I'm with Benedictine International School. It's an international school in Quezon City, but definitely now that doesn't really matter given the pandemic. Anyone could just log in school wherever you are in the world, right? So I've been with them for 15 years now, and I'm advocating for the use of systems thinking in Philippine education.
Sounds great. By the way, can you run through what systems thinking is all about? I think it's something new for the industry also.
Yeah, it's relatively new in the Philippines. It hasn't been going around that much. Although of course there is already a movement in the Philippines to use systems thinking, not just in education but also in other sectors. So systems thinking is an approach to learning or a way of thinking wherein you see the bigger picture, and by being able to do that you also see the parts and how they are interrelated towards each other. It allows people to be creative and critical, to think of consequences, long term, short term, unintended consequences. So they become more careful and responsible when they make decisions. So it's mainly attributed to an American scientist and senior lecturer at the MIT, Peter Senge, who actually came to the Philippines twice already. And as part of that, we are, of course, using systems thinking as an approach to learning.
I see, I see. Okay, our topic today is a little bit interesting. Or no, not a little bit.
Mm.
It's very interesting, especially to those people who have kids. Um, what is the usual traditional education system here in the Philippines?
Right. So when you say traditional educational system in the Philippines, it's basically the same framework that many schools around the world have been using for, let's say, about 200 years. So it's an industrial, it's from the Industrial Revolution, wherein it's factory-like, wherein you produce batches of products and then you try to measure whether they're of quality or not by using grades and things like that. But of course, the physical setup will be face to face. They go inside the classroom. There's a teacher in front. Everyone is facing the front or the blackboard for instruction, waiting for the teacher to download information for them. That's a traditional way of thinking. Of course, there are now many different types of schools in the Philippines. Benedictine International School, or BIS, as
Yes.
one of the more progressive ones,
Mm-hmm.
wherein now the classrooms are treated differently. Everyone is a contributor to the discussion, and the teacher is no longer just the one who gives instruction or who gives information. The teacher is now a facilitator of the discussion to generate learning, creativity, and critical thinking.
I see. So that still means that the students still go into school and then face to face with the teacher.
Yes, most of the time it's really like that. Yeah.
Okay. What about, is the Philippines ready to open up the schools again in August? What do you think?
That is a very good question because given the pandemic and the data that we have, right,
Yes.
there are a lot of risks when you open schools. That's why it's not just schools, but basically mainly parents who have apprehensions about sending their children to schools or to the physical classrooms because as of now there is no vaccine yet. Data would show us that they are now susceptible to getting the virus, and it's very difficult if you expose them to these kinds of risks. And so, to ask whether it's safe to go back to the physical classroom, one must understand the complexity of the situation. While, of course, it would be an ideal situation to go back to the physical classroom, given what the data that we have right now, it's simply just very risky. And so, a lot of the schools are transitioning to online classroom or to what others would call e-learning because physical distancing, especially in high risk areas or those under the modified, enhanced
And community quarantine.
community quarantine, right?
Yeah.
Physical class or physical classes are still not allowed, and so it's simply not the way to go forward as of the moment.
I see. But again, going online, don't you think there will be a little bit of pros and con to it? Because if I remember correctly, when I was still in school, we are afraid of the teacher, and then we get to learn more. Kasi diba, when you're in the classroom, your friends are there, you're trying to learn everything. But right now, you're telling us that if we go on e-learning, what if I don't like the teacher? I just press mute, or I just go out of the room. Will that be a
Mhm.
very big difference when it comes to the education system?
Definitely, there's going to be a big difference, primarily because given the context of the Philippines, where internet is very slow, people are worried about going online and conducting online classes, despite the fact that there are available tools for
Mm-hmm.
it, right? It's going to be very difficult. So it's good if I would dare say that this year's academic year or school year is going to be a transition year for us from the physical classroom to an online space for learning. And you're right, there are pros and cons, right? So cons would be definitely because it's a transition year. A lot of the teachers are not prepared for it, and so the teachers are basically using the time, the summertime or the period between school years to prepare for that,
Correct.
get certifications, attend webinars, and read up and research on these kinds of things. And so, with that, you don't expect teachers to be completely ready, competent, and excellent in being able to deliver a lesson or to handle a class online. But definitely, of course, there are pros to it, there are benefits to it. One, you get a sense of safety because children are at home,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Yes.
now it is an opportunity for us to look into new ways of teaching, but at the same time also to recalibrate and to renew our perspective on learning.
Cor-
Because just like what you said, before it's fear based. Like we
yes.
operate on fear and things like that, especially the more traditional ones. Now, given this,
Mm-hmm.
wherein children can be easily distracted and parents will have a more difficult time being a teacher as well at home while working from home, dual roles at home. It has to be a kind of learning that is self-directed, where children are inspired to learn, wherein they would like to talk about things and not just listen to teachers who will mouth information that they can easily search on Google, right? And so
Correct.
it has to be really something that inspires them, that directs them to action as well, and not just to tickle their fancy. And so you will need to restructure your classes around a self-directed learner and create structures that will generate that kind of behavior and inspiration among students.
I see. Before we go to creating that type of environment, um, how do you think the school system or the enrollment will go on? Because, like you said, there will be a online e-learning service the school will be offering. for a transitional stage. Will that be
Mm.
included in the tuition fee for the parents when it comes in? Because I believe not everybody have a fast internet at home. Because again, if you're
Right.
going to do an e-learning service, you need to have a good speed in order for the kid to learn. Will that be included in the tuition fee of the parents when they enroll their kids?
Of course, definitely it will vary per school depending on how the school will manage its own resources, their capabilities, and things like that. However, of course, it is expected that even if, for example, that the school provides these
Mm-hmm.
kinds of things, it will still be not a guarantee that things will be okay, given the kind of connection that we have here in the Philippines. But number two, of course, as far as the enrollment fees or the school fees are concerned, definitely there will be a change, and the change will be reflected in the school fees. One for one, because you don't bring them out for educational trips, right? They
Correct.
won't be using laboratories and things like that. But some of the expenses of the school remain the same. For example, salary of teachers, and even now you have to invest in their training because it's something new, right? So there are costs, but of course, schools will also be compassionate towards like what are the experiences of parents at home. And you're right, the realities are different in every household. Some may have very good internet connection. And on a bigger perspective, if you look at Philippine education, that is the disparity
Mm-hmm.
that this pandemic has made us focus our attention to as well. Because while the more affluent ones can afford and have just a very little disruption in their schooling, of course, those who have less in life will find it even more difficult to access education. Imagine if you just run on prepaid load,
Mm-hmm.
then you'll have to spend more on data. Now, will you spend money on data connection or on food, basic necessities like that? And so it's something that, of course, government leaders and those who have more leverage in Philippine education to think about as well, especially for those who are in the high risk areas.
I see. I see. And then you also mentioned a while ago about creating that atmosphere, especially online. Because
Right.
it's a different thing if you go to school, spend time with your classmates, spend time with your friends, and listen to your teacher, than just seated at home in your living room or in your kitchen and watching an iPad or watching a computer for you to be able to learn something new. How do you think
Mm.
teachers or people or the school will be coming up with that type of environment already?
Right. So in systems thinking, there is what we call there are several habits of a systems thinker. And one of the habits is that to always think that structure influences behavior. So how you structure your online class or that space that will hold learning for children will
Mm-hmm.
affect how they will be even outside of that physical setup or even an online setup. So as far as structures and concern and behaviors, one must always understand that connection is very important. It's not just connection to the internet, definitely. It's a connection between human to human. And the challenge for teachers is to how do you establish connection online?
Correct.
And now you will have to teach children to be more human even online, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, there are other challenges online. There's bullying, there's cyberbullying and things like that. And you have to be able to teach children how to navigate this new reality. As a matter of fact, of course, for children, they're very adept with technology. And if you want to build 21st century learners, you need to be able to teach them the skills in navigating through this reality, but at the same time, without losing the main point of learning, which is to be a better human being, to be even more connected with the self, with others, and with the environment. And if you're able to handle that, then it's a lot easier to move forward and filling in the gap of the different divides, the social, spiritual, and environmental divide. And the teachers are up for the challenge, I suppose, because at the end of it all, it's not so much the knowledge that we teach. Now, even more important is that we teach children how to be better human beings, not just tech savvy kids.
I see. I see.
Yeah.
So, I know you're also a busy person. I will not get much of your time. Is there any movement or any uh any support group that you're currently managing or any talks that's coming up for you, feel free to invite some of our guest listeners right now.
Yes, thank you so much, Mike. So first and foremost, thanks and thanks for having me here. This is actually a platform to get the message across that we are in a time of renewal and transformation. So this is an opportunity for us to create a better world, to come out better human beings, and we can do this in collaboration with each other. So I am a facilitator for Innovate PH, wherein we offer personal mastery programs, and they can check that out at innovate INNOV and numerical 8.ph for those programs on leadership and things like that. But also, as I've mentioned, I work with Benedictine International School, and actually in our school we're very excited because now this is an opportunity to even forward our advocacies, specifically systems thinking, and creating individuals with balanced IQ and EQ. And
Mm.
so now we're excited because there's an opportunity for us to offer that to an even wider base. So if you'd like to get to know more about our school, you can just visit
Mm-hmm.
www.benedictine.edu.ph or send us an email, inquiry at benedictine.edu.ph. You can also find us on Facebook at BIS Philippines.
I see.
There you go, Mike.
Thank you, thank you, Eric. Let's talk after I wrap up the show. Uh,
Yes, but again, thank you for inviting me. Really appreciate it, Mike.
Thank you very much also. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Mr. Eric Cruz. Again, if you want to learn more about his advocacy, please go to Innovate or Benedictine School for the website. Join me again on Monday next week as we talk about the more sports activity here in the Philippines with Coach Benny. So again, thank you very much again for listening to our episode for today. See you guys very soon.